surprise. We're living on the edge.
Welcome back to the Dave Thompson Show, here live from Orchestra Hall, where the Center of the American Experiment is hosting Mark Stein. I am now happy side here. You're going to have actually time to stick around and hear Mark Stein. You're going to be off running somewhere.
No, we're off running somewhere. I'm here for an hour or so, but it'll be fun to be here and talk to some people.
Well, I appreciate you stopping by, and you have a new television ad out.
Yes.
And we will be playing that. Now, it loses a little bit when you don't, but I'll ask people to picture a sort of deer in the headlights Dayton and then a very pleasant, competent-looking Jeff Johnson, so they can play that in their mind as we're playing it on the radio.
You have the message down just exactly right.
I think I do. And you take a little bit of a shot at the governor.
Yes.
And I think legitimately so. Where are you seeing this race going over the next 26 days? We've seen some polling data indicate you've got some ground to make up. How do you intend to do that?
Well, for me, it's all about name recognition and making sure people understand who I am and see me as a viable alternative. If you look at the Star Tribune poll, which is a little bit of an outlier, but has some interesting statistics in it, it showed that 20% were undecided, but the governor had 100% name recognition.
Yes.
So that 20% know him, and they don't want to vote for him, but they, at least at that time, didn't know enough about me to be comfortable with me. So I got to make sure they know who I am, and they not only are comfortable with me and like my vision, but I also got to give them a reason as to why I'm better than the other guys. So that is kind of what you're going to see the rest of the way, is a fairly sharp contrast based upon both the vision of where we're going with education and healthcare and efficient government, and then also the issue of competence, which is what the commercial is all about. We have a governor right now who is disengaged and probably not competent to be the governor.
That's right, and I have, of course, lived it in the legislature over the last 2 years with this governor in power, and your ad points out some things related to the Viking Stadium, related to other pieces of legislation that he admittedly didn't even know what was in there.
Right.
And I think most people do expect their governor to understand the bills that they're signing.
Yeah.
And so, I obviously hope that is successful, and we will see what happens. Now, you had a debate last night.
We did.
I didn't get to see it yet. I saw the first one, but based on the live tweeting I saw, I felt like you frankly landed some blows.
Yes, it was 90 minutes versus 60, so I think that helped a little bit. And I would argue that I was aggressive in the first one, but I was certainly more aggressive last night, and I will probably continue to build on that as we get closer to the election. And I really tried to use the theme of this commercial a lot last night about a governor who doesn't seem to know what's happening in his own administration, and when something goes wrong, always blames someone else, usually the Republicans. I bet we heard it 10 times last night. When I would bring something up, his response was, well, that's not my fault, that was the Republicans' fault.
Right.
And my response is, sometimes you got to own up to things. When you're a leader, you take responsibility if something goes wrong and you try to fix it rather than blame someone else.
And that's particularly poignant, Jeff, when you're talking about the governor, because we all know the governor speaks with one voice as opposed to the legislature where there are 201 voices. And so the idea that the governor doesn't take responsibility for the things that don't go well.
Right.
He certainly takes responsibility for what he perceives to go well. I want to touch on an issue that I think is especially important this election, and that is we continue to see the top line numbers, the unemployment rate, as indicating Minnesota has a good economy and perhaps better than the national average. But when I talk to people on air, and when you see articles that go in depth a little bit more, what you find is lots of people are underemployed. Lots of people are employed part-time that would like to be full-time. And now there was an article out today, and I know you're campaigning, you're not reading the internet, but there's an article out today indicating that median wage is going down on jobs that are being offered.
I saw that.
Okay. Do you think the people are getting that? Do you think the people feel that we're not doing as well as maybe these top-line economic numbers show, or don't they see it?
No, I don't think if I were to say any of those statistics to them, they would care. But I think they feel it, and I hear that wherever I go, whether it's in the metro or in greater Minnesota, people saying, I'm told that the economy is so great in Minnesota, but I'm not feeling it in my family. My kid's living in the basement even though he's got a 4-year degree.
Uh-huh.
I'm working 2 part-time jobs because I can't find a full-time job because it was probably created in Iowa or some other state. So yes, absolutely, people are feeling it. And it came up last night a couple times during the debate. I talk a lot about the underemployment rate because that means something to real people out there. And the governor's response to the fact that we have about a 50% underemployment rate was, he called it nonsense. He said it's a meaningless number and it's not accurate. And of course, I pointed out to him that it came from his administration.
Details.
And he went on to say again, well, it doesn't matter because it's not true. Well, yes, it is. And if you actually went out and talked to normal people in the state, which he's not doing much of, he's doing a lot of ribbon cuttings, but he's not talking to people, he would find that there's a great concern out there about the economy and about jobs in particular. So that gives me hope that people are awake.
That's right. And, this governor is so detached. I will tell you a little anecdote from the frugal Mrs. Thompson. She is a substitute school teacher, and she substitutes in both the Lakeville and the Farmington district. Before the year started, she got a letter from the Farmington School District that we're going to keep you below 30 hours so you don't become eligible for health care. This affects real people, and a lot of the hiring, this report also says, as you probably noticed, a lot of the hiring is part-time employees.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And again, I'm hearing it, and that is what we as Republicans don't always do as well as we should, is relate this to everyday lives of people. So
yes.
When we're talking about the business climate, I tend to talk about jobs and the kid living in the basement rather than taxes and regulations. And when we're talking about MNsure, which shockingly didn't come up in an hour-and-a-half long debate last night.
I know, amazing.
But when we talk about that, it's not necessarily just about a crappy website that we wasted a lot of money on. It's about all the people who lost their insurance and the parents who can't get their babies covered for months because the thing is such a mess. Those are the facts that people can relate to.
Yeah, I think that's right. And you know that when we were campaigning as opponents, I talked a lot about education.
Yep.
And one of the things that is more frustrating to me than many others is the fact that the Democrats are able to sell this idea that they're the party of education. Of course, they've been running a hit piece on you for some time that you voted against increasing education budgets and the like. What drives me nuts is they have been doing things the same way for 2 generations. We are sitting in a location right now where the schools around us are graduating about 50% of African American students. And what's their answer? Do more of the same.
Right. And you look at those results and see that we spend much more here than anywhere else in the state, and that's clearly not the answer, but that is always their answer. And that's that is the frustration that I have probably more than anything else with Mark Dayton is on education issues, because he bases every one of those decisions on what a special interest tells him to do, namely the teachers union. And we should be basing all of those decisions on what's best for our kids rather than the adults in the system.
My guest is Jeff Johnson, the Republican nominee for governor, 26 days to the election. One of the things that I have been able to do now that I'm out of the governor's race that you can't do is beat up on the people that aren't supporting you, and on the Republican side.
Yep.
And what I mean by that is we all know Norm Coleman didn't get some votes he should have gotten. As a result, Al Franken was elected senator, and we've got Obamacare. You need, in a blue state, to have all Republicans in the same boat, rowing in the same direction.
Every single one.
And particularly the moneyed people. Are you starting to see that come around, or are you still seeing this hesitancy to get behind you?
No, actually the last few weeks in particular have been very good. Our last financial report, we actually outraised Governor Dayton and raised a little over $1 million. So the quote-unquote business community, some of the folks that have some serious capacity to give money, with a very few exceptions, have come around, and they've been very helpful, and we're just going to continue pushing that, because the only way I win this race is if I get the message out on television. We'll do some radio as well, but television's still king, and it's tremendously expensive. And the money is coming in, and if I can keep it up at this pace, we'll be able to stay on solid all the way through.
And I always say there's about 3 million adults in this state, about 37% of whom are Republicans. So say roughly, if it was 40%, it'd be about 1.2 million people. If they each gave you $5,
right,
you'd be the next governor.
Yeah. Amen.
And
Amen,
so
brother.
the small contributors matter too.
Oh, they do, and we're getting about between 200 and 250 envelopes in every single day. We've got like 4 almost full-time volunteers that are going through them, and people are sending in $1 bills, which means a lot, because somebody who sends in a $1 bill probably can't afford it. It probably means more to them than the $1,000 check I get from somebody.
We're on the same wavelength. I remember just about getting tears in my eyes when I'd open that envelope, and there'd be obviously shaky writing from somebody that's
Right.
probably an older person with a $10 check.
Yep.
And I
Yep.
think that person cares enough that they're obviously making a sacrifice to help me out, and obviously you're seeing the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will tell you, the last couple of weeks, I have noticed that people in general, whether it's Republicans or otherwise, are starting to really pay attention to the race. And I believe strongly that if people pay attention, I win.
All right.
If they don't, I won't.
One more question for you, I'm going to let you go. What is the theme that you are going to be running on over the next 26 days? If you can have every Minnesotan hear one thing from you, what is it?
We want a governor who is actually engaged and knows how to solve the problems that we've had in this state for some time that have gotten much worse, by the way, in the last couple of years. Jobs, education reform, and making government more efficient and effective.
Fantastic. When we come back, I'm going to play Jeff Johnson's most recent commercial. We'll talk about it on the air. Meanwhile, thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks, Dave.
Good luck to you. Appreciate your time. And we will return right here on Twin Cities News Talk, AM 1130 and TwinCitiesNewsTalk.com.
It's Thompson now. Up and at 'em tomorrow morning. Only on Twin Cities News Talk, AM 1130 and 103.